Dune by Frank Herbert. This 500-ish page book has changed my life. As in, I've just finished reading the book and I'm going to read the appendices soon, because can you believe that? Such an intricate world that it has multiple appendices, about different words. And anyway, the book Dune by Frank Herbert is a science fiction book set in the future where there's this thing called the spice, this chemical, this substance that's found on the planet Arrakis, this desert planet, and they use that that substance for pretty much everything, to see the future, interstellar travel, etc., etc., etc. And it's such a great book. It's always been on my periphery, growing up on the internet, reading about science fiction and all these nerdy things like, damn, Dune, I should read that maybe one day. And then I heard the movie was coming out like a year or two ago, and like, you know what, I'm gonna read Dune before then. Didn't. And it was always like on my list of books to read, But then one of my friends in English class heard about this or something, and he's like, I have a copy of Dune, and he did, and he's lent it to me, and I'm returning it to him after a couple of months, creased and all. I'm really sorry about that, Matthew, but it's such a great book. Dune is amazing. I love it. It's so cool. I mean, the imagery of the sandworms are just so ubiquitous. I mean, even for people who haven't read Dune, I don't know. It's always been sorry, do you know how long I've been reading this book? This is a different house to the one I've used to live in. Like, I moved houses. I'm in year 12 now. Well, I was in year 12 in my last book reviews, but it's been like a couple months. Pretty much instantly since my last book review, I just started reading another book, and that was Dune. I mean, there was like a week or something in between. Let me just read the. No, I'm not gonna read it. I'm gonna read the blurb. But yeah, such a great book. I really love how some elements of fantasy are combined with science fiction, because you know how science fiction and fantasy are very intimately related, but there's fiefdoms and there's dukes and there's emperors and stuff, because Frank Herbert believed that, feudalism, where we have a king and knights and peasants and a whole great chain of being, he believed that was kind of the natural order of humanity, and that kind of is. I mean, even right now we're living in some sort of techno-feudalism, depending on who you ask, really. But not only does it have that aspect of fantasy in it, it also has prophecies and whatnot, because spice allows you to see into the future, and there's race consciousness, and like humans coming together and sharing some sort of collective consciousness, and being in like groups of humans who subsist on the spice. They act as one organism, and not only that, but having someone who is destined to be the one, that is like the main character, Paul Mordiv Atreides. I don't know how to pronounce any of it. I haven't seen any of the movies. I'm just going off of what I've read. But there's like a main character, and he's destined to be all these things, and he comes into it in his prophecies, and he sees into the future and takes up his rightful heir, like takes up his authority after his father dies, and etc., etc. Not only that, but the book is also full of lots of excerpts of fictional books, kind of prophesying the future. So you'll read about something, and then there'll be an extract of a fictional book of saying, yep, this happened, this happened, this happened, like history books from the future. I mean, the world of Dune is incredibly intricate. I mean, to have an appendix about terminology of the Imperium, or the motives of Ben Gesserit, or the ecology of Dune. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculously detailed. And this book is actually made up of 3 books, which would be Dune, the Mordiv, and the Prophet, which at the end of each part, I was just like, oh my god, it keeps getting better, it keeps getting better. The ending amazing. Everything was kind of building up to it, and the way the worms and everything and the spice and everything just kind of comes together in the end into one singular thread of storyline, and that's really beautiful, I think. Additionally, I love the whole idea of living in the desert, or like imagine an entire planet that's desert, just massive dunes and everything. I mean, and not only that, but there's also Arabic terminology used, and I'm kind of from the Middle East, kind of ish. I mean, yeah. It's hard to explain. Well, it isn't hard to explain. Whatever. It's just like I kind of vibe with all like the Arabic words like jihad and whatnot used. I mean, not jihad. I don't vibe with that at all. But like in the book, it's used as like religious fanaticism and like the main character feels that if he goes down certain ways, he can see into the future and see that it will lead to nothing but religious wars and like people gathering in his name and endless bloodshed, and he has to prevent all of that. And you can also see loss of innocence and coming of age. That's very important in this book because we have someone who is a boy, essentially. Of course, a boy who is groomed to be the one, really. A boy who is put under such intense conditions that he is who he is, and that he was made to be who he is, and who he forever will be. And, well, where was I going with that point? Oh yeah, that boy, that young, innocent boy, although wise beyond his years, becomes even wiser, grows even more mature in the face of tragedy, in the face of loss, in the face of grief, in something he calls, at the beginning of the book, I mean, there's a lot of foreshadowing, something he calls terrible purpose, something you feel that you have to do, or something that you know is going to come onto you, and you have to prevent it, or you have to just go along with it, because we all have to embrace our terrible purposes. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to be gained out of this book, and it's just really cool. And I've been talking about 7 minutes about Dune. I'm going to watch the newest movie adaptation. I looked at the cast earlier today, and I was just laughing, because it looks kind of ridiculous. I mean, excited to see it, maybe. I wanted to see when it came out. Whatever. Dune, 10 out of 10, no, 11 out of 10.